Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Carissa Smith and I am the DuraSpace Services Manager. Today is the second webinar in the series entitled DuraSpace Services 2015 Accomplishments and a 2016 Sneak Peek. Last week, I talked a little bit about the DuraSpace Direct services, including DSpace Direct and ArchivesDirect. And this week, I'll be talking about the cloud services that DuraSpace offers, including DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault. So if that's not what you were intending to listen in on today, then you're in the wrong place. A few general housekeeping items before I get started. As you've probably already observed, your audio is disabled for today's call, but as anybody who has participated in a webinar with me can attest to, I really want to make this as informative and useful for the folks in the audience as I possibly can. So please feel free to use the chat feature located in the bottom left of your screen. And as I'm speaking today, going through the presentation, please don't hesitate to insert a question or a comment or any sort of statement in the chat feature, and I'll be sure to address it right then and there. Again, the purpose of my sessions is really meant to provide you with the information that you need to make effective decisions and move forward at your institution. So don't hesitate to use the chat feature as I'm going through today's presentation. I do have about 16 slides that I'll be presenting, and I also will be doing a live kind of preview interface demo as well, so you won't be bored with watching slides. We have about an hour, but I shouldn't take up all that time, but there'll be certainly enough time dedicated for questions and answers and discussion as well. All right, so with the housekeeping out of the way, I will learn how to move to the next slide. Here we go. So I'll be talking a bit about DuraCloud first, and then the second half of my webinar we'll talk about DuraCloud Vault. And I'll end with a summary or an overview of how you would distinguish between the two services, as I know there is some issues with the names. They do have very similar names, but they are slightly different services. So first I'm going to talk about DuraCloud. It was launched as a service publicly in November 2011. Prior to that, DuraSpace did several years of beta pilot testing of the DuraCloud software and service with a tailored group of institutions to really refine the features and functionality of the service, as well as to develop the pricing model around DuraCloud. I would summarize the DuraCloud service as a preservation-savvy hosted cloud service from DuraSpace. And for those of you who are not familiar with DuraSpace, I should note that it is a not-for-profit organization based in the United States. And it's comprised of two very distinct but important, I always blank on how to determine or to describe this, two separate initiatives within the DuraSpace organization. One side of the organization is devoted to sustaining open source projects and the open source community around those projects for the DSpace open source software, the Fedora repository open source software, and also for the Vivo open source software. On the other side of the DuraSpace organization lie the hosted services that are offered, including DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault, which I'm talking about today, and DSpace Direct and ArchivesDirect, which I talked about last week. So open source is the theme, and stewarding the open source communities as well as offering hosted open source services. Back to DuraCloud in particular, as I mentioned, it was launched about 4 years ago. And in that time, we've really seen a growth in the customer base using the DuraCloud service. Of course, academic libraries and archives, as well as community colleges and archives, are using the service, the typical DuraSpace community members. But we've also seen adoption from public libraries, preserving very crucial, high value digital collections that they are responsible for, as well as government agencies and professional associations, preserving some of their internal documentation with DuraCloud. In particular, the American Library Association is preserving their internal documents with DuraCloud. And then we've seen discipline-specific repositories backing up and preserving their materials in DuraCloud. Museums and other cultural heritage organizations who have digitized or have digital collections and materials are preserving content in DuraCloud. And of great interest to me is the adoption of DuraCloud by several religious-based organizations who have certainly digital materials within their purview that they're preserving in DuraCloud as well. So certainly a wide range in terms of types of content, types of institutions, as well as size of institutions leveraging DuraCloud, which is really, really great to see and has really helped to expand the feature set and functionality of the service. So talking a little bit about kind of the summary or high-level view of DuraCloud and the benefits that it offers to organizations who decide to subscribe. Certainly it is a software as a service, entirely hosted and managed service from DuraSpace. So just by default, it enables quick startup. There is no hardware or software required of the customer in order to get started preserving their digital materials. There's only two things that are required, an internet connection and a web browser. And with that, you can start preserving your materials in DuraCloud. I'll talk a little bit in more detail in one of these subsequent slides, but DuraCloud is configured to integrate with multiple cloud storage providers, which means that there are several benefits. Certainly, you're not locked into one provider or one vendor, i.e. Amazon. DuraCloud then manages multiple copies, handles consolidated billing. There's certainly a lot of benefits around handling as many cloud storage providers as you, the customer, decide that you wish to subscribe for. And I will show what that looks like in the interface and talk a little bit in more detail in just a moment. DuraCloud also enables easy and straightforward content transfer options for moving your materials into cloud storage, as well as preservation-savvy content transfer options as well. DuraCloud itself has been geared towards the preservation-minded, so there are content checks along the various transfer routes that your content can take to DuraCloud, and certainly the big commercial cloud providers are not so cognizant of the types of checks that our community in particular are looking to have done. Once content lands in the cloud, whichever storage provider you choose, DuraCloud will automatically continue to check the health of that content. It is an audited check that DuraCloud conducts itself, the software. It does not trust what the cloud vendors are reporting as a content health details. It does its own audited check of that material. Of course, assuming you have an internet connection, you can have access to your data at any point in time, download and restore from DuraCloud at your leisure, at your need. There is no proprietary software that's running. I'm kind of hinting at the last bullet on this slide. DuraCloud is entirely open source. So the software itself doesn't run any proprietary code, nor does the service DuraCloud package your materials in any way. The content that you upload into the DuraCloud interface is exactly the content that you would download and restore. So you're not locked into the service from a technical perspective either, in terms of having your materials wrapped in any proprietary way that would disable you from migrating to another system or just restoring your materials in a disaster recovery scenario. You also own your data. It's important as a not-for-profit mission-driven organization for DuraSpace to assert this, and we do in our service level agreement, that no copyright ownership or responsibility is handed over to DuraSpace as part of using the service. We realize that you are the stewards and the owners of your content, and you continue to do so even through the use of DuraCloud. So there's no handing over of ownership or rights or anything like that around your content. DuraCloud subscriptions are based on an annual billing cycle, which equates to predictable cloud pricing, which is something for those of you who are familiar with Amazon is not a benefit. Amazon prices are quite unpredictable. Pay as you go. At the end of the month, you get a bill, unless you have really put in budgets into place and other metrics to monitor your usage. Your bills can change month to month. So one of the great benefits of DuraCloud, especially for our user base, is that predictable annual pricing that you can budget for in advance and not have to worry about getting an unpredicted bill in the mail like you would from Amazon potentially. And of course, there's personalized support embedded into the service and the subscription to really make sure that your use case, your needs, and your workflow for your digital content is met with the service. So I personally do individualized training sessions for all new customers to get them up and running and started with DuraCloud. Delving into the standard features, so I just summarized some of the high-level benefits as I see them, but I'll delve into the actual features of the service now. And for those of you who are just chiming in, please don't hesitate to insert questions into the chat feature on the left-hand side of your screen. I stated at the beginning that my sessions are meant to be informal, so please don't hesitate to use that chat feature. So the DuraCloud service itself is a hosted web-based software as a service, as I've mentioned, and it has a web-based interface. So that's how you interact as a customer with DuraCloud and how you upload and download and manage your digital collections in DuraCloud. DuraSpace manages all of the system administration, installation, server setup, upgrades, bug fixes, patches, firewalls, that whole process on your behalf as part of the subscription. As I mentioned in a couple slides previously, DuraCloud also makes available easy-to-use content transfer tools, as well as ongoing synchronization tools. So you can relatively quickly bulk upload content to your DuraCloud account. If you have a use case where you need to have a preservation server synchronized in an ongoing fashion, whether that be daily, weekly, or just every second that an item is updated on that server locally, it gets pushed to DuraCloud. We have tools that not only make that process easy and automatic, but that also verify the integrity of your content as it's being moved from your local area to DuraCloud, and then DuraCloud to the storage provider that you've chosen. So that's what I really mean by preservation savvy tools. There's a lot of checks and verifications built into our tooling to make sure that the content that's being transferred through the wires, through your internet connections, maintains its health and integrity as it's being moved from place to place. Again, I've mentioned a few times, but I wanted to put on the slide specifically the cloud storage provider options that DuraCloud currently offers. By default, DuraCloud leverages Amazon S3 storage for all primary copies of content stored in DuraCloud. And customers can then opt for additional secondary or tertiary cloud storage providers as well. You could pick all of them if you wanted to, though we certainly don't have any customers who are managing 4 or 5 copies in DuraCloud at this time anyway. But you can optionally choose to have copies stored in Amazon's Glacier storage, in Rackspace Cloud Files, and within the San Diego Supercomputer Center's cloud storage facilities as well. And right now, the SDSC cloud storage option is our only academic cloud provider. Certainly Amazon and Rackspace are commercial vendors. But coming soon, and I'll talk about this, this is just a preview for an upcoming slide, DuraCloud will be offering Chronopolis as a secondary storage provider option as well. Depending on how many cloud storage provider options you choose, the DuraCloud software will automatically replicate your content amongst the providers and keep everything synchronized so that you can just log in and view your content. You don't have to worry about manually making sure that your Amazon S3 location has all 500 items and your Amazon Glacier has all 500 items. DuraCloud ensures that those two are exactly mirror copies of one another. And as I've mentioned, the DuraCloud software itself conducts automated quarterly content integrity checks. These are bit-level MD5 checksum verifications of your content that's stored in DuraCloud. And again, that happens automatically in the background. The software just has a scripted service that runs. And related to that, but I had to break it up on the next slide, is access to the reports that are the outcome of those content health checks, as well as downloadable storage reports for the content you've stored in your DuraCloud account. And new in the latest release of DuraCloud that was made available just about a month ago are audit reports as well as content manifest reports for the materials you've stored in DuraCloud. The audit information includes details like the user who uploaded content, the user who may have modified content in your DuraCloud account. If a user deletes content, that's also logged in the audit report, the date that all of these actions have happened, the item upon which the action was taken. Pretty standard audit information as you might expect. Also, the content manifest is available for download in DuraCloud now, and that includes the item names, content item names, as well as the MD5 checksum values that are associated with those items in your DuraCloud account. Moving along here, I want to make sure that I leave enough time at the end for questions if there are none during today's session. Certainly you can create users, groups of users, and then assign permissions based on either those users or groups within your DuraCloud account if that is a use case that you need to enable. In the enterprise plans within DuraCloud, which I'll talk about subscription plans in just a moment, there are media streaming features and functionality available. This service is based on some Amazon media streaming services that we simply pass through the DuraCloud interface that allow you to stream media either through the DuraCloud web interface, or you can then embed those media streams in likely more user-facing applications. So that's an additional piece of functionality, optional functionality. Of course, I've mentioned customer support built into the subscription, which includes access to a support ticketing system. I think that's pretty par for the course for software as a service in 2015. Of course, you can upgrade your storage needs at any point in time. You're not locked into the number of terabytes for which you've subscribed. You can always add more storage. You can integrate your DuraCloud account with other systems. In particular, DSpace and ArchivesDirect have direct integrations with DuraCloud, such that you can, in DSpace repository case, you can back up all of your repository material and its metadata in DuraCloud automatically. And with ArchivesDirect, you can take the output of the ArchivesDirect process that creates archival information packages and store those in DuraCloud as well. So you do have some options for direct integrations, and that's something that the DuraCloud development team is always looking at to integrate with even more systems. And of course, I've mentioned this a few times, but it merits bringing up just one more time, the fact that DuraCloud is entirely open source software. There is no proprietary software being run. And really what that equates to is that you're not locked in from a vendor perspective, either to the service itself or having your content packaged in any proprietary way that would make it an absolute nightmare to migrate away. the content that you put into DuraCloud is the exact content that you can download at any point in time. I've hinted at the DuraCloud subscription plans, and I won't really spend a lot of time here today, though I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. DuraCloud is separated into two distinct subscription plans depending on primarily your use case and how many users are going to be sharing your account or not. The preservation plan is priced at $1,875 a year, which includes 1 terabyte of storage. So that's a subscription fee and 1 terabyte of storage. The enterprise plan, which enables media streaming and a lot more enterprise level administrative functionality, is priced at $5,750 a year. Again, that's a subscription fee and 1 terabyte of content. Certainly, you can add additional terabytes to either of those plans. And the plus versions of both the preservation and enterprise plans allow you to add on additional secondary storage providers. And depending on which one you pick, we'll adjust the pricing slightly differently in that Amazon Glacier is certainly a cheaper alternative on either of the plus plans versus the San Diego Supercomputer Center Cloud, which is more expensive than Amazon Glacier. So, and of course, more storage is always available. When we get into the large subscription plans, so 25, 50 terabytes a year, I generate custom quotes as the cost per terabyte is certainly lower than the two per terabyte prices listed on the screen. Economies of scale equal a lower per terabyte cost when you start adding multiple terabytes to your account. Again, I didn't want to spend too much time on pricing, but I'm happy to take any questions that there are. For those of you who have not seen DuraCloud ever, I thought it would be just a quick, I thought I would give you a quick preview of the interface in slide form before I move on. A few things to note, there's quite a few pieces of information in the screen, but I wanted to point out just a few items, and let me get my pointer out so this will be easier, which is not always easy. Okay, apologies for the movement. I still haven't figured out this pointer in Adobe. So in the top left side of your screen, you'll see first the Amazon Web Services logo. That gives you an indication that all of the content in the screen below is being stored in Amazon S3. If you have integrated your account with multiple storage providers, in the top right side of your screen, you'll see a provider pull-down window that will allow you to navigate between the various storage providers that your account is integrated with. And the interface below will look exactly the same. What will change is the logo in the top left, but then you'll see the copies of your content in the interface below. So it really, the DuraCloud interface really helps to streamline the preservation of your materials regardless of how many storage providers you're using. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the DuraCloud Spaces column. A space is a container or a bucket for storing your content items. In the center column of your screen, you'll see the content items that are being stored in this DuraCloud space called Carissa Images. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the details for whatever it is you've selected. In this case, I have the Carissa Images space selected. It's highlighted in gray, so I see details here on the right-hand side of the screen. If I had clicked on one of the content items, I would see content details here on the right. As you've probably already observed, the orientation is from left to right, and you get more information as you move further right on your screen. Very similar to a Mac interface. Just a few other things to note. I mentioned the audit log capability, the manifest capability. So those reports are available, and with the click of a button within the interface, you can download those. And then also information around the content health check is also available as well, including the date that the last health check was run over the content in the space, as well as at the very end of the line, the ability to download the full report of the content health check that was run. And again, I don't know if you can see it, but that report is a clickable link here within the interface. And there's a whole bunch of other information, but I didn't want to take up too much time today. All right, catch my breath and move to the next slide. So lastly, the thing that I wanted to talk just briefly about before moving on to DuraCloud Vault is the updates that we have in the queue for 2016. We're really excited in the early part of this next year to launch Chronopolis as a storage provider option within DuraCloud. For those of you who are not familiar with Chronopolis, it offers 3 geographically dispersed replica copies, dark archive replica copies within the Chronopolis infrastructure. And that will be a really great additional storage provider offering that DuraCloud again will be launching tentatively the early part of 2016. And it will add yet another academic / non-commercial storage provider option within DuraCloud. We, the DuraCloud team, have also started talking with Oracle regarding their new archive storage offering. And for those of you who have not heard anything about Oracle's archive storage, it's priced equitably with Amazon's Glacier service. It's really meant to be a competitor in that market, so really, really cheap storage. So we've just started talking with Oracle, and will likely continue those discussions as their archive storage service starts to be solidified. It's right now in more of a beta prototyping phase. And so we hope to start looking at the possibility of integrating DuraCloud with Oracle. Question coming into the chat, and sorry, I was noodling on and didn't get to it right away. Which content texts do you do that are additional to what the cloud storage providers, in particular Amazon Web Services, do? That's a really great question, and I'm sorry I didn't go into detail. So Amazon does a content health check when it receives content for the first time. So it will compute an MD5 value for items that it takes into its storage location, S3 in particular. And then what DuraCloud will do is a couple different things. So let me kind of paint the picture for the whole kind of workflow. So when you first transfer materials from your local environment to DuraCloud, DuraCloud does an MD5 level generation for the content item locally. It will then, the tooling will then transfer a copy of the material to DuraCloud. It will then do another MD5 value creation and compare the local MD5 value to the one that it calculated in when the item landed in DuraCloud to make sure that the transfer from your local environment to DuraCloud was a success. It will then transition the material off to Amazon S3. It will do a check as soon as Amazon S3 receives the item to make sure that the trip from DuraCloud staging to Amazon S3 is completed successfully. And then in an ongoing basis, approximately once every quarter, DuraCloud will pull the material out of Amazon S3, recalculate each item's MD5 value, and then request from Amazon what it believes the MD5 value to be. And then it will do a 3-way comparison to the originally calculated MD5 value for the item when you first added it to DuraCloud, whether that was a week ago or 3 years ago, to the MD5 value that DuraCloud calculated that day. And then it will also compare it to Amazon's stored MD5 value to make sure that it hasn't experienced any bit rot or bit loss as it's been sitting on Amazon infrastructure. It does the same level of checks for the San Diego supercomputer storage area as well as for Rackspace Cloud Files. The one storage provider that we don't do that level of checking, i.e. streaming the item back out of storage and recalculating, is Amazon Glacier, because that would incur a fee. So on a regular basis. For Amazon Glacier, DuraCloud simply queries Amazon Glacier for the MD5 value and then checks to make sure it still matches the original. I hope that answers your question, Elston. Please let me know if there's any follow-up to that, but thank you. That was a really, really great question. And lastly, in 2016, I'm working on simplifying the DuraCloud subscription plans and reducing the pricing. So keep an eye out for that at some point in 2016 as well. All right, so moving on to DuraCloud Vault. A similarly named service from the DuraSpace organization that is targeted to launch in 2016. The distinction with DuraCloud Vault is that it is a service that's offered in partnership and collaboration with, two other entities, including, or those two other entities are Chronopolis as well as the Digital Preservation Network, most commonly called DBIN. So the DuraCloud Vault service in itself will be an end-to-end solution for long-term access and preservation for DBIN members specifically. So whereas DuraCloud is available to anybody on the planet to subscribe, DuraCloud Vault will only be available to DBIN members. It will be an ingest and replication node within the DBIN infrastructure. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. All of the benefits of DuraCloud are certainly enabled in DuraCloud Vault. It is a very similar service from a technical perspective, but there are a lot of high-level benefits that being a DBIN member leveraging DuraCloud Vault will also enable. So the Digital Preservation Network itself, for those of you who may not have heard of it, is a collaborative effort that was started by the Academy and is building preservation, specifically long-term preservation services and the legal and financial and technical infrastructure around long-term preservation for the Academy specifically. So they're grappling with a lot of very high-level functionality as well as discussions around this particular topic. Specifically, DBIN members will have access to preserving their materials in a dark, diverse, replicated infrastructure with 3 separate locations storing copies of their content. These separate locations are known as nodes within the DBIN infrastructure. So if I say node in these subsequent slides, it is a separate location where content within DBIN is being stored. Other very high-level benefits of DBIN and DuraCloud Vault use is that there will be audit and stewardship succession, easy to type, not easy to pronounce, in place at the time a member deposits content within DBIN. And there's also legal structure within the DBIN infrastructure, structure and infrastructure. Sorry to be using all these similar words. There will be legal structure in place from the Digital Preservation Network's perspective to mitigate organizational change or dissolution from a member perspective. So for instance, if you decide to become a DBIN member next year in 2016 and you deposit some materials, and then if something happens in 5 or 10 years, you can no longer be a DBIN member. There is legal structure in place to determine what will happen to your content after that point, after you're no longer a member or perhaps your organization dissolves. Again, there's high-level discussions happening around the legal structure to be in place for continuing to preserve that material. And of course, as I've mentioned, DBIN itself is structured financially, technically, administratively around the issue, the problem of long-term preservation, long-term being 20 plus years. Again, keeping the format similar here, the standard features of DuraCloud Vault. Some are quite similar to DuraCloud kind of standard. There is a web-based interface that you interact with as a user of DuraCloud Vault. The DuraSpace organization still manages all of the system administration and upgrades of the interface that you're using. You'll have access to the same easy-to-use content transfer and synchronization tools. Again, you can integrate other systems with DuraCloud Vault. The bones of the service are very similar to DuraCloud. So DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault, from that perspective, are quite similar. The differences come in regarding preparing and then replicating content to additional deepen nodes. So DuraCloud Vault has been architected to complete that cycle of preparing and then replicating members' content into other deepen nodes. Within the DuraCloud Vault interface itself, there will be deposited content reports and then other deepen related data that's still being determined. And also through this same interface, you will have access to request restores of your deepen materials. Again, the entire flow of content into and request for restores will happen all through the DuraCloud Vault interface. So that's really one of the major distinctions between DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault. Highlighting some more significant differences, again, between the two services. And I must say I completed this slide because I thought it would be useful for everybody on the call today, but also just for my own my own distinction between the two services. So from a customer or member perspective, you can see a difference between DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault at the cost model level. So for DuraCloud Standard, you are paying for storage annually. In the DuraCloud Vault Deepen scenario, you pay for Deepen membership and then you receive storage for your content, I believe 5 terabytes of your content, for 20 years. So a quite substantially different cost model. Succession within DuraCloud Standard is not really existent, does not exist. At the end of your subscription, if you decide not to renew on an annual basis, you can either download your content or it will be certainly deleted by DuraSpace at the end of your subscription because it's pay as you go. And as I talked about in a previous slide, Deepen has mechanisms in place to steward the succession of your materials within the Deepen infrastructure. So that is a huge difference between the services. Another significant difference between DuraCloud and DuraCloud Vault is the actual location of where your content will be stored. As I've mentioned, DuraCloud leverages primarily commercial cloud storage providers, though we do have a few academic/non-commercial offerings. Storage within Deepen is fulfilled by Deepen nodes. And I've listed the initial 5, the Academic Preservation Trust, AP Trust, Chronopolis, HathiTrust, Stanford Digital Repository, and Texas Digital Library. Chronopolis is the DuraCloud Vault node, although that might be a little confusing for folks, but those will be the 5 major Deepen nodes, at least in 2016. And there is facility to add additional Deepen nodes as time goes by. And lastly, the business model for both services is again different. As I've mentioned, DuraCloud Standard is a software as a service from the DuraSpace not-for-profit organization, and DuraCloud Vault will be available to Deepen members only. So it is a membership service, essentially. All right, so a quick preview of what's to come in 2016. The biggest item on everybody's list is to launch the service, of course. We are targeting January 2016. Certainly post-launch, there will be a lot still to do, including content ingestion and metadata best practices being created by Deepen members in the community. A few more specific things will be providing more detailed reporting in the interface as we receive more member feedback as they start to use DuraCloud Vault, and certainly there'll be technical improvements and refinements. And longer term, certainly we'll be looking to enable more feature development based directly on deepen member feedback. And a question from Daniel. Just so I understand correctly, if I am a deepen member, then there's no additional cost for the DuraCloud Vault. That is absolutely correct, Daniel. Your deepen membership pays for the use of DuraCloud Vault. There's no additional fee to use the service. Again, great question. If anybody else has questions as I'm prattling on here, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. But again, just to clarify, DuraCloud Vault is a service available to deepen members, and your membership fees do cover the use of DuraCloud Vault. And as I mentioned, I believe it's 5 terabytes of storage is included. And I can get more details from the deepen team as well. DuraCloud Standard, on the other hand, is an annual subscription, and you pay per terabyte to store your materials on an annual basis in DuraCloud Standard. All right, so enough talking to slides. I thought I would do a quick preview of the DuraCloud Vault interface. So bear with me while I transition here to another screen. And we have about 20 minutes before the hour. Again, feel free to insert questions. And again, bear with me one moment while I transition Adobe. Okay, so with any luck, you should all see my screen without any issue. So the DuraCloud Vault interface is in front of you, and give me just one moment while I log in. One thing you may see right away is the similarity in this interface to the DuraCloud interface, which I showed a snapshot of in a slide earlier. And that's true. The software itself is quite similar. Let me just get back here. I see there's a notification. Oh, yes. Thank you, Dave. Dave Kohler from Deepen clarified that Deepen membership includes 5 terabyte of deposits per year. Okay, 5 terabytes per year of your membership into the Deepen infrastructure without additional cost. Thank you very much, Dave, for that clarification. And I just minimized this chat, which I did not want to do. All right, back to the interface. So very quickly here, as I was noting, it looks probably quite similar to the screenshot that I showed in a slide earlier. I wanted to note just a few things about how this interface works. And I don't know if my Adobe cheat is blocking your view. There is still the concept of spaces in the left-hand side of your screen, and the interface still drills down as you move further right on your screen. So if I click on a space called Puppies, I will have the ability to add content items here in the center panel. And I have the access to the audit log and manifest, etc. here on the right-hand side of the screen. The major difference in the DuraCloud Vault interface from a user taking action perspective is that you will add your content items to your DuraCloud interface, and then when you have added all of the materials, or have created a collection of materials that you're ready to move to Deepen, you will create something called a snapshot. Essentially, again, this is a collection of materials that you are ready to move to Deepen infrastructure for long-term preservation. So you have the ability to add those content items at your leisure and stage them here in DuraCloud. And then once you have prepared and uploaded everything, then you take the next step of creating a snapshot. Once you have created a snapshot, the interface and the software that's running in the background does quite a few activities on you, the Deepen member's behalf. So it first transitions that material to a subsequent server, and will prepare it for ingest into the Deepen infrastructure. And it will package your materials in the exact size that's required for Deepin. It will create Deepin bags and assign metadata and the technical requirements for ingestion into Deepin in the various nodes. And then once it has prepared all of your content in the correct technical format, the server will then transition the material off to the Deepin nodes where it needs to be stored, again, for long-term preservation. As a user of this interface, what you will see is that a snapshot has been created, and I created one on October 27th. It contained 5 items and then a set of properties for the items. And then the interface here on the right-hand side of your screen, and I apologize, I didn't want to do a live demo today and take up too much time, but it will transition through a series of statuses as it creates those Deepin bags, as it performs some of the technical work to prepare your material and move it to Deepin, and then it will actually transition the content to Deepin infrastructure. I was asked before, and yes, very similar to what I explained before in terms how DuraCloud is checking the health of your content through each jump of your content through the process. The same level of integrity checks are also being conducted with DuraCloud Vault as well. So as content is transitioned and snapshotted down to a staging server, bit level checks of your content are also being conducted to make sure that everything is being transitioned without any bit rot or bit loss. And again, what you will see as a user, and I'm kind of beating around the bush, what you will see as a user is that the snapshot status will be continually updated. Right now it's in the final stage saying that the snapshot is complete, meaning that the content has been prepared and then has been moved to Deepin. You can see additional information about this particular snapshot. You can again see the list of the 5 original content items as well as the properties that were moved to Deepin. I can see a description that I had added to this collection to remind me of whatever information I needed to know about this particular snapshot. And then at the bottom, and I find this to be the most useful, is information being reported back regarding the status of the transition of my materials through the various phases within Deepin. So I, as a user, know what's happening to my materials. So throughout the day on October 27th, after I created the snapshot, I can see that a Deepin bag ID number 1 was created out of this material. If you have a very, very large snapshot, there could be multiple Deepin bag IDs associated with a snapshot. So if you have hundreds of thousands of items, that's possible, and you could have multiple Deepin bags associated with that item. And then I saw as well the interface reporting that the snapshot and all of my materials were first added to the Chronopolis storage location and then transitioned off to AP Trust. And there's a lot of flexibility here at the interface to report even more information about the actions that are being taken upon your content in Deepin. And that's certainly something that the Deepin team will be working on as Deepin members provide feedback about what they would like to see here in the interface. And then the DuraCloud Vault team will technically make that happen. But certainly there's a lot of room for adding additional reports here in the interface so you can see where your content is, when content health checks are being conducted, etc. Again, for your Deepin material. And then lastly, the last step in this sequence that you could possibly take is requesting a restore of a snapshot. So for instance, if you for some reason had a disaster recovery scenario and you needed, for instance, all 5 of these puppy photographs back out of Deepin because for some reason they were lost locally, you can request a restore of that material to be made available for download in this interface. In which case, again, there would be some time that would be needed to prepare that material, to transition it out of deep and long-term storage, and then move it back into this interface and allow you to download it again from the DuraCloud Vault interface. So there is a restore scenario in place, and you would have then access to download the material from DuraCloud Vault. So that would complete the cycle of moving your materials into Deepin, as well as enabling you to restore and download those materials should you need to do that. But again, it's all kind of click button interface, and there are status reports as your materials transition through the various steps in the process. So with that, again, let me transition back to Adobe here. And again, that was just a preview of the interface. The last thing I will note, and then I will open up the floor for any other related questions. I do have a more in-depth overview of the DuraCloud Vault interface available on the DuraCloud Videos YouTube channel. So again, I didn't want to take up too much time in the webinar today, but if you're interested, please feel free to check out that YouTube video or to email me. I'm happy to do an independent walkthrough of the interface as well and answer any questions you have. But with that, I will just leave my email and all of the various web, YouTube, and documentation links on the slide. Today's session is being recorded, so that will be available on the DuraSpace website later this week as well. Are there any questions from the participants still on the line today about either DuraCloud or DuraCloud Vault? Well, I don't see anyone actively typing, so I will assume there are no questions. Thank you all very much for spending a good chunk of your afternoon with me, or morning, depending on where you're located. I appreciate it. If you have any other additional questions, please do not hesitate to email me, csmith@duraspace.org. Again, thank you very much for your time today. Take care and have a very happy holiday season. Bye-bye.